Welcome to another exciting episode of our movie series. Trust me, you're going to love this one. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe at the end so you can catch all our latest movies. Now, sit back, relax, and enjoy. Our story begins with Uzee rushing off to work. His mom asks if he's had breakfast, but he assures her he'll be fine and quickly says goodbye. Next, we meet Jacob and his wife, Naomi. Naomi is upset because Jacob is heading to a business meeting. She's been feeling sad and frustrated as they haven't been intimate for 4 months. Jacob blames work stress and his age, he's 40, for his low libido, but Naomi can't help but wonder if it's her stretch marks or if she's just not attractive to him anymore. Jacob reassures her it's not that, then leaves, leaving Naomi feeling even lonelier and more upset. Meanwhile, at the office, Uzee impresses his boss, Naomi, with an amazing presentation. Naomi is pleasantly surprised by how helpful Uzee was. It reminds her of the days she used to ask Jacob for help, only to be met with excuses, leaving her feeling unappreciated. Later that night, Naomi finds herself really craving intimacy with Jacob. She ends up crying, feeling desperate, and decides to take care of her own needs. It's tough, and although she knows it's not the ideal situation, she can't help but wonder why Jacob keeps denying her affection. It just doesn't seem fair. The next day at work, Naomi asks her secretary where Uzee is. The secretary tells her he stepped out for a bit, and Naomi asks her to send him to her office as soon as he returns. Meanwhile, Jacob is at a hotel with another woman. Yes, Jacob is cheating on Naomi, and this other woman has been his girlfriend for 2 years. Jacob keeps telling her that he'll leave his wife soon, but this time, she's not buying it. Frustrated, she leaves the hotel, clearly tired of waiting for him to make a decision. Back at Naomi's office, Uzee finally returns, but Naomi is furious because he didn't complete the task she gave him before stepping out. He tries to apologize, but Naomi is too angry and threatens to fire him. Uzee continues to apologize, but she dismisses him. Uzee then speaks to the secretary about what just happened. She tells him that Naomi is usually nice, and maybe she's dealing with something personal. A little later, Uzee's phone rings. The secretary jokes that it must be his girlfriend. But whatever the call was about, it really affects Uzee's mood. He tells the secretary to leave him alone, and she walks away, giving him some space. That evening, at home, Uzee is working on his presentation when his mom brings him some food. He compliments her cooking, because, let's face it, who doesn't love their mom's cooking? They chat while eating. But during the conversation, Uzee's mom gets emotional. He comforts her, promising that everything will be okay. But what's really troubling her? We'll find out soon. That night, Naomi goes on a date with a younger guy named Sam. She wasn't expecting him to be that young, but she's flattered. Sam is really into older women and keeps flirting with Naomi, telling her how beautiful she is. This reminds her of the times she asked Jacob if he still found her attractive, only to be met with cold responses. In the hotel room, Sam continues complimenting Naomi and flirting with her, but Naomi feels uneasy. She's not entirely comfortable with the situation, but Sam convinces her to stay. Deep down, she's angry at herself for even being there. Back at home that same night, Naomi tries one more time to get close to Jacob, but again, he pushes her away. Naomi is left feeling worried and frustrated about the state of her marriage. She starts reflecting on her friend Betty's advice that she's too young to be this deprived. Betty had even suggested that Naomi find someone else to meet her needs. What do you think? Is Betty being a bad friend, or is Naomi handling things the wrong way? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The next day, Uzee goes to Naomi's office to apologize for the previous day's incident. He promises it won't happen again. Naomi tells him she's worked too hard to build the company and can't afford any more mistakes, then dismisses him. After work, Naomi was driving home and saw Uzee walking. She offered him a lift and asked why he was walking. Uzee explained that he doesn't have much money and this is his first job. Naomi was surprised that Uzee was traveling such a long distance to work. As she dropped him off, Uzee thanked her for her kindness. She then offered him some money that would cover his transport for a month. She also told him that they had won the contract. He was so happy he almost hugged her, but she declined, and he quickly apologized and left. As Naomi drove off, she had a terrible accident. It was so sad. Meanwhile, Jacob was in a hotel with his girlfriend, ignoring his phone as it rang. Uzee, on the phone with the company's secretary, was talking about how kind-hearted Naomi was for offering him a lift. While they were still on the call, the secretary received another call. This time, it was bad news. The hospital had tried to contact Naomi's husband, but couldn't reach him, so they called her office instead. The secretary broke the news to Uzee, and he was shocked, rushing to the hospital immediately. At the hospital, Uzee donated blood to save Naomi's life, as her blood type was rare. Naomi eventually woke up in her hospital bed and was grateful to learn that Uzee had donated his blood. However, as she was thanking him, Uzee collapsed and fainted, and Naomi called for the doctor. Uzee was admitted to the hospital, and Naomi was very worried, but the doctor reassured her that he would be fine. Betty came to visit Naomi and was surprised that Naomi's husband hadn't called since the accident. Naomi was upset that her husband hadn't come to check on her, while her employee not only donated his blood, but even signed as a family member. Wow, Uzee really is a good guy. Not everyone would do what he did. Meanwhile, Jacob was still at the hotel with his girlfriend. She was asking for more than just being his girlfriend, and they nearly had an argument before Jacob walked away. Later that night, at Uzee's house, his mother was worried because she hadn't heard from him since he left for the hospital. A mother will always worry. Later at the hospital, Naomi visited Uzee in his ward. He was already awake. Naomi offered to inform one of his family members, but Uzee declined, not wanting to worry his mother. That morning, Uzee went home, and his mother asked him what was wrong. Uzee pleaded with her, saying he needed to freshen up, and his mother agreed. She probably saw how stressed he was and decided to let him go without pressing further. At Naomi's house, her husband Jacob was yelling, demanding to know where she had been. She didn't respond and tried to walk away, but Jacob grabbed her, shouting. She tried to walk away again, but this time Jacob dragged her back so roughly that she almost fell. That made her furious, and she yelled at him. Jacob had really pushed her to the limit. Naomi warned him never to touch her like that again, explaining what had happened to her in tears. Then she walked away. That night, Uzee told his mother what had happened, and she advised him never to donate blood on an empty stomach. She begged him to take care of himself, as she only had Uzee and his sister. Wow, I didn't know Uzee had a sister. Interesting. Let's see what happens next. That same night at Naomi's house, she made advances toward her husband again, but he declined. She was really angry and asked him what was wrong. His response sent chills down her spine. He said, "I can't keep making love to an unproductive woman. We've been married for 5 years with no children." His words really hurt her, and she broke down in tears. The next morning, Naomi called her friend Betty, crying. Betty consoled her and said she'd come to her house soon. Meanwhile, Uzee came home looking sad. His mother asked him what the problem was, but he didn't want to tell her and just said he was fine. What could be bothering Uzee? Naomi's company had a 3-day conference, and she went with Uzee. They were supposed to do a presentation before the conference, but it turned out the hotel had only 1 vacant room left, so they had no choice but to share it. Uzee went to freshen up, and when he came out in just a towel, Naomi couldn't help but get lost in thought. Later that night, while Uzee was sound asleep, Naomi decided to make a move on him. He tried to resist since she was his boss, but eventually, it happened. The next morning, Naomi woke up feeling satisfied but full of regret. Over at Uzee's house, he was filled with guilt and seemed lost in thought. His mom noticed something was off and asked him about it, but he brushed it off and left. Back at Naomi's office, she was confiding in her friend Betty, feeling torn up with guilt but also admitting she had enjoyed what happened between her and Uzee. Betty reassured her, telling her not to worry so much. Meanwhile, Jacob's girlfriend was at home holding a pregnancy test. Could she be pregnant? Let's find out. That same day at Naomi's office, Uzee was packing up his things when Naomi walked in. The secretary explained that Uzee was planning to leave, and Naomi was surprised. She immediately asked to see him in her office. In Naomi's office, she opened up to Uzee, telling him how he made her feel and that she didn't regret what had happened. While they were talking, she kissed him again. Later that day, at Jacob's girlfriend's house, she showed him the pregnancy test results. She was pregnant. Jacob was thrilled, feeling like his prayers had been answered, and he thanked her. He even proposed right then and there. Naomi took Dozie shopping at the mall, but as they were leaving, Sam confronted Naomi and insulted Dozie. This made Dozie furious, and he fought Sam, but Naomi stepped in and stopped them. Later that evening, Dozie's mom was curious about the gifts Naomi had bought him. She wanted to know what was really going on between Dozie and his boss. Dozie assured her that nothing was happening and that Naomi was just being nice. But his mom wasn't convinced. That night, at Naomi's house, while she was asleep, Jacob lay awake, staring at her. What could he be thinking? Does he suspect something's up? Jacob later called Naomi's friend, Betty, to ask if his wife was cheating, since Naomi had stopped bothering him about their relationship. Betty didn't want to get involved, telling Jacob to handle his own issues. Jacob went to pick up his girlfriend, and she asked if he was sure about marrying her. He reassured her that he was ready, and they happily drove off. It looked like he was going to meet her family. I'm not sure Jacob is making the right move, but let's see what happens. At Dozie's house, his mom was home alone when there was a knock on the door. It was Jacob and his girlfriend. And guess what? Jacob's girlfriend turned out to be Dozie's sister. Wow, what a small world. So now both Dozie and his sister are involved with married couples. What are the odds? This is getting interesting. Naomi insisted on knowing where Dozie lived so she could make sure she hadn't been imagining things. Dozie agreed and let her drop him off at his place. Thankfully, she didn't come inside as that would have been awkward. Dozie's mom was upset with her daughter for being out of touch for months, but Berinda, Dozie's sister, apologized and her mom forgave her. Berinda then introduced Jacob to her mom as her fiancé. While Berinda went to get Jacob some water, Dozie walked in and was shocked to see his sister. She introduced Jacob as her fiancé, and suddenly there was another knock on the door. It was Naomi, returning a file Dozie had left in her car. Dozie introduced Naomi to his sister and her fiancé, and Naomi was speechless. Both Dozie and Berinda were confused. As they were asking what was going on, their mom came out and immediately recognized Naomi as her long-lost sister. What a twist! Naomi was actually Dozie's mother's younger sister, who had gotten pregnant at 16 and ran away after giving birth. Now everything is starting to make sense. Dozie's mother was angry at Naomi for abandoning her child. Naomi apologized, explaining that she was just a scared kid back then. Naomi then asked about Berinda, and her sister explained that she got married, had Berinda, and became a widow. Naomi was worried that Berinda was marrying a man like Jacob, but then Berinda dropped a bombshell: she was pregnant. Everyone was stunned. Naomi then asked about the baby she had abandoned all those years ago, and to everyone's shock, it turned out that Dozie was her son. Both Naomi and Dozie were in complete disbelief. Naomi fainted from the news. Wow, what a surprising twist. Life is full of unexpected moments. Who do you think is to blame in this story? Share your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for joining me on this wild ride. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to get more incredible stories like this one. See you in the next movie. I hope this works for you. Let me know if you'd like